Hello students, welcome to our online video tutorial class. Welcome again, because already we all know that we have completed the chapter biological classification, and according to your CBSE syllabus you will be seeing that after biological classification there is another chapter, that is plant kingdom. So we are starting today the plant kingdom discussion. Okay. First of all, in the plant kingdom we have to know about the systems of classification. That means how we are classifying the plant organisms separately in different kingdoms, in different classes, phylums or divisions. So let's see how we are classifying the plants. There are actually 4 to 5 total classification mechanisms are mentioned in this page. First one, that is the artificial classification system. Second one, that is the natural classification system. Third one, that is the phylogenetic classification system. Fourth, that is the phenetic classification system. And fifth, that is the cladistics classification system. So let's see whatever the types of classification. Artificial classification is the classification of animal or plant depending on only the external morphological features or characteristics. As an example, habit, body color, number, etc. That means only based on the external morphological feature when we are classifying any organism, maybe that is animal, maybe that is plant. That kind of classification mechanism is commonly called as or known as artificial mode of classification. Keep it in your mind, this kind of classification have some drawbacks. Why? Because it is found that morphologically same characterized animals or plants, they are belonging from separate group, as well as sometimes it is found that morphologically different organisms are belonging from the same group. That means always if we will go for the classification of the organisms based on morphology only, it will happen with us. We will categorize them into different phylums or kingdoms if they are morphologically similar also sometimes. And sometimes we are keeping two different organisms who are morphologically also different, but based on another features they are kept within the same group. So this kind of problem can arise if the artificial classification will be only done. So nowadays artificial classification is not followed because it is not the appropriate mode of classification for plants and animals. Next, natural mode of classification. This is the classification mechanism of animals or plants, and that is not only depending upon the external morphological characteristic features, rather the internal characteristics or anatomical characteristics like ultrastructure of each and every body organ and tissue, embryological evidences, phytochemistry, that means the chemical substances present within the plants. These all things are studied, and after studying these all aspects, then only we are classifying the plants or organisms. So obviously with the external morphological feature, if we will consider the internal morphological features or anatomical features also, then the classification process will be more appropriate. The classification of organisms in proper groups will be done in a proper manner. So natural classification will be more appropriate than the artificial classification system, and we are following this natural mode of classification nowadays during the time of classification of organisms. Phylogenetic classification, from the name phylogeny we have understood obviously there is a evolutionary relationship involved. That means when we are classifying the individual organisms depending on the evolutionary relationships between the individuals who are existing, as well as the interrelationship in between the organisms who are existing and extinct. So by studying the interrelationship in between existing organisms as well as extinct organism, we are classifying the organisms, and this is obviously based on evolutionary relationship. So automatically this kind of classification is named as or called as phylogenetic mode of classification. Next, there is another mode of classification present, that is known as phenetic classification system. Phenetic classification is the another kind of classification where we are taking the help of the numerical algorithm, okay, or by the help of common ancestral characteristic features we are classifying the organisms. Again I am repeating, phenetic classification is a type of classification mechanism where we are taking help of the numerical algorithm, or by considering the common ancestral characteristic features we are classifying the organisms. That kind of classification is known as phenetic classification. One point here I want to say that common ancestral characteristic features which are commonly found in organisms, those are biologically known as apomorphic features or apomorphic characteristics. So this point we have to keep it in our mind. Last point about the classification, under the classification, that is the cladistics classification. What is that? When the classification of individual organisms we are doing based on the shared derived characteristic features. In the previous we have seen in phenetic classification we can classify the organism based on their common ancestral feature. Here we are saying that we can classify the organisms based on the shared derived characteristic features. Okay, and then the classification which is done based on the shared derived characteristic features, that classification is commonly known as cladistics classification, or itself it is called as cladistics. So I think the entire 5 different modes of classification of plant kingdom or rather any kind of organism, it is very much clear to each and everyone. So I am just moving for the next slide. In the next slide you can see there is actually discussed about the branches of taxonomy. So what are the different branches of taxonomy present? There are 4 different branches of taxonomy present. One is morphotaxonomy, second one is cytotaxonomy, third one is chemotaxonomy, and fourth one is numerical taxonomy. So let's see whatever the types of taxonomy. First one, morphotaxonomy. It is same with the based on the when the classification we are making based on the external characteristic features. Then it is known as artificial classification. So here also artificial classification is equivalent to morphotaxonomy, because when we are using taxonomic classification for classifying any organism, and that taxonomic classification we are doing only based on morphological features, then that is called as morphotaxonomy. That means morphotaxonomy and the last slide we have discussed about that artificial classification system, both are similar, both are equivalent. Cytotaxonomy. Cytotaxonomy is such kind of taxonomic classification system where we are classifying any organism, maybe animal or plant, based on cytological features or cellular features. Then that kind of taxonomy is commonly known as cytotaxonomy. Next, there is a presence of third branch, that is the chemotaxonomy. Obviously we can understand from the name that when the taxonomic classification is performed based on the biochemical characterization of the cell or biochemical features of the cell, then that kind of taxonomic classification is commonly known as chemotaxonomy. And the last one, that is a numerical taxonomy. Already we have discussed in the previous slides also, that is about the phonetics. So here it is written that when the taxonomic classification will be done for any of the organism including plants also based on the numerical algorithm, or by taking help of the numerical algorithm we are classifying organisms, then it is known as numerical taxonomy or phonetics. So there is obviously a relationship in between the systems of classification and branches of taxonomy we have seen in these 2 slides. And I think these 4 branches of taxonomy, whatever I have just discussed here, it is also very much clear to each and everyone. Moving for the next slide, because we are now entering within the plant kingdom. Classification of the plant kingdom. First of all, plant kingdom, if you see, entire the plants present in this kingdom are separated into 2 different categories. One is cryptogams or cryptogamy, another one is phanerogams or phanerogamy. Cryptogam or cryptogamy word, if you break it, you will be getting crypto and gamy. Crypto means hidden or absent, and gamy means seed. That means in case of which plants those are seedless or seeds are not present, in case of those plants are coming under the category that is cryptogamy. Next, phanerogamy are those kind of plants which are having seeds, because phanero means present. Okay, or if it is present also, it can be naked or it can be covered, but the seed is present. So those kind of plants who are having seeds, those are coming under this category, phanerogamy. Cryptogams or cryptogamy can be subdivided into 3 different categories. One is thallophytes or algae, bryophytes or moss, and pteridophytes or fern. And in case of phanerogamy, obviously it is subdivided into gymnosperm and angiosperm. Gymnosperm word, if you break it, gymnos means naked and sperma means seed. That means in case of which plants obviously naked seed can be found, those are known as gymnosperms. And in case of which plant the seed is not naked, rather covered, because angion word means covered and sperma means seed. So in case of which plant or in case of which fruit the seed is covered, those are coming under the angiosperm category. Next, angiosperm plants are subdivided into 2 different categories. In case of those seeds 2 cotyledons are present, those are commonly known as dicot category. Another category is containing single cotyledon, and for that reason they are called as monocot category or monocot seeds. So I think overall the classification of the plant kingdom with the meaning of each and every terminology, it is very much clear to each and every one. Here Thallophyta, it is called algae. Why? Because thallus means the body which is not differentiated into root, stem and leaf. So in case of algae, obviously you can't see the root, stem and leaf differentiation. That means they have thallus like body, so that's why they are under Thallophyta. Bryophyta, bryon, that word means moss. That means moss like plants are present within this specific category. Pteridophyta, pteridos means fern. So fern like plants will be coming within this specific category. Okay, going for the next slide. In the next slide, there are more three categories of the plants have been told, that is Tracheophyta, Spermatophyta and Embryophyta. What is Tracheophyta? Tracheophyta are those specific type of plants which are having vessel elements and phloem. That means entire the vascular bundle is present. In case of which plants, those are commonly known as Tracheophyta. It is written vascular plants, also known as Tracheophyta, form a large group of plants that are defined as land plants and that have lignified tissue for conducting water and minerals throughout the entire body of the plant. So here within Tracheophyta, obviously three different divisions it will come of the plant, that is Pteridophyta, Gymnosperm, Angiosperm. These three will be coming within the Tracheophyta category because they are having vessel element, they are having phloem. That means overall the vascular bundle is present. If you go for the Spermatophyta, you will see that in case of Spermatophyta, obviously they can produce sperma or seed. So for that reason they are commonly known as Spermatophyta, or they can be also called as phanerogams. Okay, so phanerogam, that means Gymnosperm and Angiosperm, maybe their seeds are naked or their seeds are covered, but they are coming under the Spermatophyta category. Next, Embryophyta. What is Embryophyta? Embryophyta is a such kind of plants which are having embryo or which are producing the embryo. So they are coming within this category, that is Embryophyta. Keep it in your mind, Embryophyta refers to the plant producing a diploid chromosome containing embryo resulting from the fertilization of the female gamete, that is oosphere, by a spermatozoid, that is male gamete. So spermatozoid is the synonym of the male gamete and oosphere is the synonym of the female gamete or the egg. So when they will fertilizing with each other, they are forming zygote and that zygote is further producing the embryo. So in case of which plant this embryo can be present or embryo can be formed, they are commonly known as Embryophyta, and it is found only in case of phanerogams, that means in case of Gymnosperm and Angiosperm plants. Okay, so I think these three categories of the plant also is very much clear to each and every one. Going for the next slide. Next slide we will be discussing about the comparative study about the different plant divisions. Keep it in your mind. Here we will be discussing about the different comparative study in between the plant divisions. Okay, whatever the different plant divisions we have studied, Thallophyta, Bryophyta, Pteridophyta, Gymnosperm and Angiosperm. So first of all, we will be discussing about Thallophyta, Bryophyta and Pteridophyta. Then we will be going for discussion about the Gymnosperm and Angiosperm. So let's see first slide. This is actually the difference in between a comparative study in between Thallophyta, Bryophyta and Pteridophyta. Already we know Thallophyta, it is called as algae, Bryophyta is also known as moss and Pteridophyta is also known as fern. So obviously first we will be discussing about their habitat. Thallophyta is obviously aquatic, maybe they are present in marine environment or freshwater environment, but they are aquatic. Next, Bryophyta. Bryophyta will be exclusively terrestrial, found on shady, moist, damp places. Pteridophyta, they are exclusively terrestrial plants but favorable in the shady condition like bryophytes. Keep it in your mind, these bryophyte pteridophytes are also green in color like algae or like plants. Next, after algae, after first point, there is a next point, that is body structure. If you see the algae, obviously they have thallus like body, that means there is no differentiation of root, stem and leaf. They can be unicellular, they can be colonial, they can be filamentous also. Bryophyta or moss, they are multicellular, thallus like body, already I have told, and they are containing parenchymatous cell, that means they are containing parenchyma tissue also, and for that reason they are having the chloroplast within that and they are green in color. Pteridophyta, they are multicellular plant body, they are not like thallus because their root, stem and leaf, this little bit difference has come in their body, that's why they are not thallus like body showing organism. Next, tissue differentiation point. In the tissue differentiation point, you can see or you can say that algae is ill-defined tissue differentiation found because their entire body is thallus-like. So no such kind of differentiation of the tissue can be found. In case of bryophyte, if you will go, you can see the tissue differentiation has come and that is well defined. In case of pteridophyta also, tissue differentiation is properly present and that is well defined. Now next, in case of algae or in case of bryophyta, pteridophyta, next point is thallus organization. Obviously in case of algae you can see they have thallus-like body and that is not differentiated into stem, root and leaves. Already I have told, that's why their name is also thallophyta. If you go for bryophyta or moss, that is also not differentiated. Only in case of pteridophyta it is differentiated and that is not well developed or well differentiated but little bit differentiated. It is better than thallophyta and bryophyta. Next, root, if the point is root, specifically in case of algae you will see that root is not present, rhizoids should be present but that rhizoids are also absent in case of algae. That means in case of algae no root, no rhizoid, nothing is present. Bryophyta or moss, in case of them multicellular rhizoids can be present. Okay, the rhizoids which are alternative form of the root or you can say rather the precursor form of the root, they can be present. Next, in case of pteridophyta, adventitious root structure has come because this is the most developed root structure which has arisen and that is better than thallophyta and bryophyta. So in case of thallophyta, no root, no rhizoid. In case of bryophyte, first the rhizoid structure has come, that is the precursor form of the root, and pteridophyta adventitious root has come but prop root has that entire taproot system, sorry, it is a taproot system, not prop root. So taproot system has not come properly. If you go for the next point, that is the stomata, you will see that in case of algae or thallophyta, stomata is totally absent. Bryophyta, stomata may be present, may be absent also, there is no surety about the presence of stomata. Pteridophyta or fern, stomata should be present in the leaf-like structure. Next, growth and differentiation. Obviously if you go for thallophyta and algae, every cell will be capable for the growth and differentiation. In case of bryophyta or moss, specialized cells are only capable for the growth and differentiation, not all cells. And in case of pteridophyta, if you will see, growth and development occurs but due to absence of cambium or cambial tissue, secondary growth doesn't occur, only primary growth is occurring. But this is also more advanced than the thallophyta and bryophyta. So pteridophyta only the growth is happening, development is happening and that is only primary growth. Cambial tissue absent, that's why secondary growth can't take place. If you go for the next point, that is alternation of generation. Alternation of generation is actually in case of plant, you can see two type of generation. One is sporophytic generation, another one is gametophytic generation. In the sporophytic generation, plants are producing spores. During gametophytic generation, they are producing gametes. So sporophytic generation is 2n number of chromosome containing cells produced and gametophytic generation is haploid number of chromosome containing cell produced because there only gametes are present. So here I'll just clarify that. So when the sporophytic and gametophytic generations, it will come in an alternate manner, then this phenomenon is commonly known as alternation of generation. So here I will be saying in case of thallophyta or algae, alternation of generation can be found, and keep it in your mind that alternation of generation which is found, that is homologous type. That means sporophytic and gametophytic generation both are similar looking. That's why it is known as homologous type of alternation of generation. Bryophyta or moss, that is showing heteromorphic type alternation of generation because their sporophytic and gametophytic generation are not similar looking. That's why their alternation of generation is heteromorphic type. If you go for the pteridophyta, you will see they are also showing heteromorphic type of alternation of generation because for them also the both of the phases, that is sporophytic phase and gametophytic phase, both are not similar looking, both are different looking, but both are containing different structures also. So I think the classification or the comparative study in between thallophyta, bryophyta and pteridophyta is very much clear to each and every one. Now I am just moving for the next point or the next slide. In this slide we can discuss about the first point, that is the sexual mode of reproduction. Specifically if you see thallophyta, they are showing the sexual mode of reproduction, and that sexual mode of reproduction can be of three types: isogamous type, anisogamous type and oogamous type. Keep it in your mind, isogamous type means this is a type of sexual reproduction where the gametes can fuse with each other, and obviously both of the gametes are similar looking, that's why they are known as isogamous. Anisogamous is the next kind of sexual reproduction where the gametes are not similar, though both are flagellated but both are not similar looking, that's why they are anisogamous. And oogamous type of sexual reproduction, because here the fusion of gametes are happening but both of the gametes are different in shape, size and function. In case of oogamous, always keep it in your mind, one gamete is motile and small, another gamete is non-motile and large. The motile gamete is the male one, non-motile gamete is the female one. Keep it in your mind, they are having the sex organ also, that can be unicellular or multicellular but not jacketed. That means there is no external covering for this kind of sex organ. But if you go for the bryophyte or moss, you can see there the sexual reproduction can happen, and that is only oogamous type, no such kind of isogamous or anisogamous type of sexual reproduction taking place. They are having multicellular sex organ, and that multicellular sex organ is jacketed, that means covered. If you go for the last one, that is Pteridophyta, that is also showing oogamous type of sexual mode of reproduction, and they are having multicellular sex organ, and that is also jacketed, that is covered by the covering. If you go for the dominant phase of the three different divisions, you will see that in case of Thallophyta, the dominating phase is gametophyte. It means gametophyte is actually present for the longer time than the sporophyte. That's why gametophyte is the dominating phase. In case of the bryophyte, the bryophytes also, gametophyte is the dominating phase because it can sustain for a long time. And for the last one, that is for the pteridophyte, sporophyte is the dominating phase because it can survive or it can retain for the long time. Next we are going for the asexual mode of reproduction. Asexual reproduction, you can see here it can be performed by the help of multiple spores: aplanospore, zoospore, hypnospore and akinete. About these spores we will be discussing under the algae obviously, but aplanospore is a non-motile spore, zoospore is the motile spore, hypnospore is such kind of spores which are remain in hidden condition. So these basic informations I am just giving here. So asexual reproduction is performed in case of thallophytes or algae by this kind of spores. If you go for the bryophytes, spores are totally absent. Asexual phase occurs by vegetative method, that means vegetative reproduction they are actually following for their asexual reproduction. And if you go for the last one, that is pteridophyte, spores are present, and two kinds of spores can be found. If the both of the spores are similar looking, that means they are known as homosporous. If the both of the spores are not similar looking, then it is known as heterosporous. So this is actually the homosporous and heterosporous condition, we have to keep it in our mind. Next, in case of thallophyte, the female sex organ which is present, that is known as oogonium. In case of bryophytes, the antheridium is the male sex organ and archegonium is the female sex organ. And specifically if you consider in case of Thallophyta, antherozoid is present. Antherozoid is the male sex organ, it is not written here but I am actually adding here. Oogonium and antherozoid, those two structures are actually the female and male sex organ respectively. Next, I have already told antheridium and archegonium, that is a male and female sex organ in case of bryophytes. If you go for the pteridophytes, you will see there they have the antheridium, that is a male sex organ, and archegonium, that is considered as a female sex organ like bryophytes. Vascular tissue, if you go for the Thallophyta, obviously vascular tissue is absent because the no xylem phloem is present, entirely the body is thallus-like, so no differentiation of the tissue found. If you go for the bryophytes also, there is also no vascular tissue is present, that means there is no xylem, no phloem. If you see in case of pteridophytes or moss, fern, you can see that vascular tissue is present, companion cells are absent in case of phloem, and vessel elements are absent in case of xylem. That means in case of pteridophytes, obviously vascular tissue will be present, but companion cell will not be there in the phloem and vessel element will not be there in the xylem. Except these two structures, remaining structures all are present, all are having within the structure of pteridophyte or fern. Next, zygote. Next point is zygote, where we can see in case of Thallophyta or algae, zygote is liberated and usually passes into the resting state. That means when the zygote will be formed, after formation it is just liberated outside and usually it is going to the resting state. and in case of this bryophytes or moss, you can see zygote is not liberated outside and not passing into the resting state, it is remaining in active form. In case of pteridophyte also, you can see that embryo formed and attached with the gametophytic plant body. So embryo which is forming from the zygote, they remain attached with the gametophytic plant body. That is the main thing we have to keep it in our mind in case of pteridophyte or fern. Next, who is dependent, which generation is dependent on which generation, that is written in this point. That means dependence of the generation. First, gametophytic and sporophytic generation is independent, that means they are not depending on each other in case of Thallophyta or algae. If you see in case of bryophyta or moss, sporophytic is always dependent on the gametophyte, and here also the dominant phase is gametophyte. Keep it in your mind, in case of algae, dominant phase was gametophyte, but gametophyte and sporophyte, they are independent. They will not be helping on each other or depending on each other. But in case of this bryophyte, sporophytic is always dependent on the gametophyte, because if the gametophyte will not arise or not come, obviously sporophytic generation also it will not come. Next, in case of pteridophyte, sporophytic generation is depending on the gametophyte, because the dominating phase is sporophyte, that's why sporophytic will be depending on gametophyte. That means first the gametophyte will come and then the gametophyte will be helping to produce the sporophytic generation. Last point, in the comparative study, that is embryo, is it presence or absence? In case of Thallophyta or algae, you will see that there is no embryo is forming, that means these plants are not embryophyta. In case of bryophyta or moss, obviously embryo structure is forming, and in case of pteridophyta or fern also the embryo structure is forming. That means within the embryophyta, including the gymnosperm and angiosperm, bryophyta and pteridophyta will be also there. That means these two type of plants are also coming under the category of embryophyta, whatever we have seen in the previous slide, specifically in this specific slide where we have discussed about embryophyta. Here we will be keeping gymnosperm, angiosperm as well as bryophyta, pteridophyta, all these four. So I think the comparative study among all of the different divisions, specifically the first three divisions of the plant, it is very much clear to each and everyone. After this we will be entering within the main part of the chapter, or the first division within the plant kingdom, that is algae or Thallophyta, and this algae or Thallophyta portion I will be just starting from the next video. So I think you have understood this entire video in a proper manner. Each and every point is very much clear to you, and you have enjoyed, I think, this video a lot. So thank you everyone for seeing this video as well as for listening the video in a very attentive manner. Thank you everyone all.